Hello, fellow fiber lovers, and happy first Advent from beautiful London, Ontario, Canada. I'm Evelyn, the creator behind the Modern Needle, and welcome to my channel. It is creeping up to Christmas, so happy first Advent. It's been about a month since I uploaded my last YouTube. Today is December 3rd, and I thought I really wasn't going to have a whole lot, but I do have quite a bit of stuff. So grab your favorite beverage. Mine is a tea in my Santa mug, and let's have a knit and chat. So normally I knit a lot and I knit all the time. However, I think I was a little bit knitting fatigued. I wanted to start everything and actually nothing, and my hand hurt like there is no tomorrow. I got an injection into my hand and I think it was a little bit too little too late. So I do think I need to stop straining my wrist and my thumb a little bit. I don't have any strength this way at all. So I didn't knit every day. Sometimes I didn't knit for 2 or 3 days. I fell into a YouTube rabbit hole or a gaming rabbit hole, and it is what it is. However, I did have a crazy amount still of things to show you. So let's start with number one. I finished this sweater last year, and it is called Tulipa, and you can find it on my Ravelry account, which I will link to on the bottom. And it is just a gorgeous sweater. The lady that designs it is an Eastern European lady, and she just has gorgeous sweaters. But let's have a close-up of this. I use the Estelle Indian DK, which is a really affordable worsted weight. And for this here, I used a self-striping sock yarn. There was one other color in the middle here, which I broke out. And as you can see with felting, what do I have on under here? You can just break it out and really just felt it back together. But it turned out so beautiful. I'm just very pleased with it. It is almost too warm in the house here today to wear it, but I just love this sweater. When I had finished it last year, I left it at the store because the sweater season was kind of over, and then this year I picked it back up and I thought, okay, so this year I can wear it, and it's just a beautiful wear. It's not too heavy, it's not too light, it's just the perfect amount. I changed the bottom rib to knit one, purl one, and then the next row you knit the whole row, and then again you knit and purl one again, and that brings this beautiful it almost looks a little bit like a corrugated rib. And then I used my very elastic bind off, which is knit 2 togethers through the back loop, and it gets very elasticy, especially for the bottom of a sweater. I put a split hem in it, so this was just perfect. But it is kind of too warm, so give me 1 minute. I'll change out of it and we'll go to the next segment. Okay, that is better. Not as picturesque as my sweater, but it is better. It's kind of warm in here all of a sudden. So when I went to the Little Red Mitten, lots of you know that I do sample knit for them. They had asked me to sample knit this beautiful shawl. I hope I'm in frame completely. Okay, yep. And it is surprisingly huge, and it is just a beautiful sample. and it is not very complicated to knit. It is a straight rib with the odd knit row in between just for interest. This is created by Mosaic Knit, so you only ever have one color that you're knitting with because you slip the other stitch. So if I'm knitting in white, I will slip the black for 2 rows, and then I come with a black, I'll knit all of the black and I slip the white for 2 rows. So it gets a beautiful, it looks like color work. It looks complicated. It is not. There is just a little bit of brioche in the bottom, which you could exchange for a fisherman's rib if you're not comfortable with brioche, but it is quite beautiful. The shawl is called Tremia by Audrey Borrego. So quite beautiful. So I was going to bring it to the store on the weekend, but I hadn't taped yet. So I said, you can't actually have it until I showed it to all of my knitting peeps. Then I had a customer that had asked me to reproduce a stocking. This is the stocking. The lady that commissioned it, I think she's probably 70. She's older than I am for sure. And her mother had made this stocking and had made one for her daughter, and then passed away. The daughter now also has a daughter, and they would really love to have a stocking for her. She asked me if I can do it, and of course I can do it. And the pattern was an old Mary Maxim pattern, which of course is no longer in print or no longer about. So I looked at the motifs on here, and they're actually stitched on with duplicate stitch after the fact. So you knit the stocking and then you stitch this on. And funny enough, a lady that I mentor, she was asked to knit stockings like this for her friend, and she actually didn't really know what she signed up for, and she thought it was color work. But you can't knit this in because it's only 1 or 2 motifs, and look how long the floats would be in the middle. So this is not it, and I can feel that this is stitched on. And you do it with duplicate stitch. If anybody is interested, I can put up a video about how to do duplicate stitch. You just mimic the knit stitch. This is my version of it. There are no decorations on the tree just yet. And I decided to knit the bits first and then mattress stitch it on, or duplicate stitch it on, because then I can get in from both sides and I can hold my work sideways if I need to. I get better tension when I do this. The trick with a mattress stitch or duplicate stitch is that you keep this at a fairly loose gauge on top, and especially if you use wool, it'll just plump up and fill in, and nobody is the wiser. Like, you would never know. I had used the end and crocheted with single crochets a loop to hang it onto the stocking hook. I repaired some of this old stocking here where it came apart, and I think it will be quite beautiful. I'll be ready to give it to her tomorrow when I go to the store and bring back the shawl. That way nobody is wasting a trip. So these are works in progress and things that I did for other people and customers. And let's talk about my Christmas knitting. As I said, my hand is really bothering me, so I was debating what it is that I want to do. Last year I did fingerless mitts, and I made them a bit longer so that they can be folded back, because some of my kids and their friends are still smokers, so they can fold it back, or even for texting, and then when they really get cold they just fold it up. So this year I thought, well, maybe I had so much fun last year, and it was actually a pretty big hit. I thought maybe this year I'll make the hats. So I went through my yarn and my patterns, and you know, as happens often, I have 3,000 patterns, 2,500 patterns in Ravelry. It's an obscene amount, but do you think I could find a hat that I thought, oh yeah, this is the absolute hat that I want to have for whatever, and I couldn't find it. However, I did find a hat pattern that I had to buy, but it was quite beautiful. So this hat is called Otterbein hat by Kara McKinley, and I'll link to my Ravelry account so that you can link to it. It is a paid for pattern. I forget if it was $6 or $7, probably something like that. But I was my daughter loves cables, and I was really pleased with how these cables, how it just, the rib, everything looked proper on that hat. Now I do have to say that the last pattern repeat in here, it had a mistake for when you finish and you start doing the decrease. There is an error in it. You should omit one row, and I do have complete notes in my Ravelry account. But I just love how this hat looks, and I also found that the hat was not long enough. The way that it was written, the hat was not long enough. Now that could be that my children have really big heads, which they do. My daughter has a really hard time finding a hat that fits her, not a knitted hat because they do stretch, but a straw hat or a summer hat or a baseball cap or whatever. So I thought this was quite lovely, and I knitted this the first time around, and then I knew that it was actually too short. So I knitted a second version for my niece who is in the army, and she is posted up in Petababa where it's quite cold. So I made her fingerless mitts last year in this kind of green. It is more olive than it looks here, and but look how beautiful that cable in that hat is, and the crown is really pretty. I always wish they would show the hats, like I'm particular to the crowns all of a sudden. I don't wear hats. Well, last year was really cold, and because my rheumatoid arthritis advances a lot more, so all of a sudden I found that I wanted a hat, so I had to steal one of my son's hat. He's addicted to them anyway, so it doesn't matter. He's like, okay, yes, mom, you can keep that hat or whatever. So I thought maybe I need to knit one. But now I started paying attention to the crowns, and I do want them to be quite pretty, not just pull in your stitches and then pull it closed. So I made my niece this hat to go with the mittens that I made last year, and then I frogged the hat that I did before in this color because I wanted to reuse the yarn, and I just redid it. I made the ribbing longer on the bottom, so for all I know, the hat as it is written could fit somebody else, but our kids with big heads, no, not really. So and because I didn't really want to unwind it, rewind it, and then knit it, I just opened it up and I knitted it as it came off the hat. So my yarn, of course, was all curly cues, and when I knitted it, it still had the curlies from the stitches in it, and I knew that when I block it, it'll block out just beautiful and be just the way that it needs to be. And it was. If I figure out properly how to do it, I'll insert a picture over here so that you can actually see the differences of the two. It is quite it was quite stark. Then my son, who is addicted to hats, thought he needs another hat because he really likes them. But of course, he needs black. And he had his 28th birthday in August. And he's very particular about what he wears. But all of a sudden, he wanted a pom-pom hat. So I was thinking, you want a pom-pom? He says, yes, Mom, I want a pom-pom. So I was thinking he wanted to have a pom-pom like this, you know. So I was looking for black or really dark gray. So I showed him this and he's like, that's not what I want. I want a wool pom-pom. Like, honestly, I had a laugh. I'm thinking, you're so picky on stuff in here. You want a yarn pom-pom? And I can't, I'm not very good at making them. So my daughter will have to make it. Like, not only can I not pull it tight, I've never been good at making pom-poms. And because I have a daughter that makes them just flawlessly and beautiful, I don't really have to relearn, I guess. And if you ever wonder how to get these pom-poms into the hat, you feed this into the crown of the hat. You can use a crochet hook and pull it down and up, and then you just feed this pom-pom over the elastic, and then when you need to wash it, you take the pom-pom off and you can wash the hat. Some hats have some pom-poms have a snap button right here. They have them attached. Then you would sew the other part of the snap button onto the hat, and then you can just connect it and then take it off. But for my case, my son, this is not what he wants. He wanted to have a real yarn pom-pom thingy, which completely surprised me. But what he said for himself, these hats here are made out of Cascade 220. I have a lot of that yarn, and it's at a good price point. It is wool, but it's not super scratchy, even though, so I have to be careful with that because I don't mind scratchy wool too much, even though my skin is changing through my illness. So I really have to go through my sweaters and the more grippy yarns I can probably no longer tolerate with just an undershirt. I'll have to put on a thinner long sleeve t-shirt so it doesn't bother me, but I'll have to see. But to me, the Cascade 220 is not scratchy at all. But my son said, you know, this is kind of like borderline, Mom. Like, if it would be any scratchier, I wouldn't be able to wear it. And I'm thinking, oh, really? So I give it to my sister, which cannot tolerate wool in any shape, way, or form. That's scratchy even a little bit. She has this awful sensitivity to it. And again, she's just like, oh, no, 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 she can't even touch it. So I know that it's scratchy to some people. So I get a laugh about it, but it is a real thing. So just to avoid a little bit of disappointment, you might want to check that. But what I wanted to say is that he is bald, my son, and he shaves all the time. So we were talking about that his hat or his beanie has to be thick enough that the when the wind blows, it doesn't go through the wool, because sometimes wool is a looser fiber. Um, so I thought, that's okay. I can line it. I can double knit it, kind of thing, or just like the gloves, I can, or the Musselboro hat, where you knit the hat like you have a tube, and then you knit the other hat just on it, and then you just shove them inside of each other, and you have a doubled up hat. But I thought, because he wanted to have a longer rim, and you can see that I made the rim a lot longer. When he folds it up, it will be double, and that's okay. But the day that he went out, he said, like, Mom, I still need a liner in here, because it is too windy on him. And again, by the time he has it on, like, some of this is not as long as I thought. So I must be getting better at making hats, or pre-thinking it a little bit more. So that's hat number 1, 2, 3. But I frogged the one and reknit it, so it's actually hat number 4. And then I thought, okay, so I'll make a hat for my grandson who is 8. And he loves knitted things and he loves getting things. So I bought this jumbo yarn, and it's $13, I think, a skein. And it's just lovely. And I thought I have enough on a skein, excuse me, for one hat. Thank you. Oh, maybe not. So I wanted it so that he can also roll it up. And it is an adult size hat. And it is called the Handspun Ribbed Hat. It takes 6.5 millimeter needles, and it's by Sarah Bradbury. And I think it'll be perfect. I don't have tons left. I just have a little bit left, and I thought I could have knitted that in, and then this would have been just a little bit longer, but I was knitting it while I was visiting with my sister, so my thinking cap is not always on. I just have I have to have something that is easy to knit, especially if we have an engaging conversation and we were actually playing cards. So I wasn't really paying attention to my knitting. I just knitted. And this is a very simple decrease where this is a ribbed hat, 2 knits, 2 purls. Once there is 6 rows to the decrease, and you decrease in the purl for the first time, so you purl 2 together. The next row is in pattern, so 2 knits, 1 purl. Then you decrease by knitting 2 of the knits together, and then it's knit 1 purl 1 in row 4, and then knit 2 together and knit 2 together, and you're finished with a decrease. However, I don't like knitting 2 together because it is harder on my hands, especially I find when I have the thicker needles, they're hard on my hands anyways. So instead of knitting and crossing my needles to get into the 2 knits, I like knitting through the back loop. What I should have done is I should have slipped the first stitch, put it back on the needle, and then knitted it, because when you knit 2 together, it leans it to the right. When you SSK, it leans it to the left, which in a crown for the hat, it doesn't matter. I would even challenge experienced knitters to see which way did the decrease go. But because I did not SSK, you can see here that it actually twisted that stitch as it laid it. The above stitches, I lifted the first one, and you can't actually see where the decrease lays except for the little twirl at the top. But here I didn't do it, and like I said, we were playing cards, and we had a board to have the cards in, so my hands were actually free. I just needed to stop, and like the kids, my hands are terrible anyways. I just had to pick the card and play. So that kind of worked, and I decided not to undo this because it's only a knitter that would actually know what this is, and I wasn't too concerned about it. So this is then hat number 5, and I'm knitting a hat, the same hat for my hairdresser, in this beautiful with blue yarn on it, in this beautiful fuchsia. And this is a alpaca, 50 alpaca, 25 wool, and 15 nylon, or polyamide. If this would have been a pure alpaca, I would have not used it, because alpaca has no memory. It is a straight yarn, so it would just bag out and grow and grow and grow, and that would be kind of like a sad thing. So because it has wool in it and polyamide, that'll stop it from bagging out. Sorry about that for a minute. I seem to have a runny nose all of a sudden today. It started already last night. So this is it for hats. So my son had also said he needed to have a matching pair of mittens. And years ago, I made him mittens. They're called Luffe, Luffe, from a Norwegian knitter. And they have a liner like this. And then you knit the mitten, or you knit the mitten first and then the liner. I like knitting the liners first, and very often I would knit the liner in a soft mohair or some fluffier yarn, and then I knit whatever I want to knit on top of it, with whatever yarn I choose. Here I would use the black Cascade 2020. But then I knitted the liner, and he said, well, he needed the liner black as well. So I knitted, plus I knitted this out of the Briggs and Little Sport, and that was just a bit too scratchy for him. So he needed a softer yarn, and he needed it black. So I have a 50-50 polyester wool yarn that is black. So I already knitted the liners for him. And I will knit the mitten around it. I will pick up the stitches. I use the cast on, the back loop cast on. So when I want to pick up my stitches, and I have a video about that in previous taped videos, so have a look if you're interested in that. I can pick up the stitches quite well. And then if this here is the right hand, which it is, it has, I will knit to the instructions of the left hand and knit the mitten in. And of course it needs to be inside out when I pick it up, so that when I do push them together, that they are right sides facing or left sides facing. And when I had knit the liner in the light gray, I thought, I like how snug they fit. I should make myself a pair of fingerless ones, because when I do knit, this is nice and snug, and I can knit with this, and it kind of supports my wrists a little bit. But then when he said, oh, this is too rough for him, I kind of stopped this, and I ended up doing the liner. But since I'm knitting it for myself, it doesn't really matter. When I get mine finished, that will be just fine. So I just have to do the outside of his and finish my finish, and finish the fingerless mitts just for myself. So that brings me to the socks that I was knitting. Oh, before I get into that, I did want to show you that on the hats, on any of these hats, you can buy little tags that are like this. They'll say, oh, maybe I should take that elastic out because it's not very good. You can get little tags like this that you can put at the bottom of the hat. This one here, it doesn't get folded. You would just stitch it on like this, or I have different ones. Smaller tags like this, they come in all kinds of different colors. And then of course you can get ones that fold over, so it'll say handmade with love. Well, isn't that silly? Okay, yeah, this way here, I would have to bring out this one. It says handmade with love, and then you just use your yarn and go through these pre-made holes here. What do I have here? These are handmade with love. These a handmade special edition for you. Oops, there we go. And it is like a silvery thing. So I'm not really sure if I'm going to put them on or not. I think for the girls, I will definitely put them on. My son, I doubt it, even though he wants a yarn pom-pom, so what do I know? My grandson, I probably put one on, and I'm not sure if he wants a pom-pom or not, but if he does, I think this one here would be pretty cute. This is one from Loops and Threads at Michael's, and I believe maybe it was around $5, but I know some of the pom-poms, they can get quite expensive. But have a look around. You can get them at all different kinds of price points. Yarn stores have them, lots of people have them, and some people actually make them with faux fur, so those are quite pretty. Then I had made, I had started some of the socks for Halloween, and I had, of course, all kinds of plans. Like I'm gonna knit all of my sock yarn that I had that was just for Halloween, and I'll start some Christmas socks. Well, I did the Halloween socks, and I wore them quite a bit already. And I don't know if I had one pair or sorry, one sock, and then I just needed in it the second sock. I don't really know where I left off, but I do have the two of them together. And then I have another pair of socks for one of my clients. They're quite beautiful. And I knitted a pair of socks for the little red mitten. So when I put all of my stuff together, I think, well, maybe I did knit quite a bit this month, even though I don't think I did. It's smaller stuff, and it is a little bit of a nice break for from sweaters, that's for sure. But I have to say the shawl, like there's 300 stitches on each side of the shawl, so it took me a long time to get across from one side to the next. Now the sock pattern that I use, I actually don't use a sock pattern, and I want to talk about that for a second. I also test knit a pair of socks that has a diamond heel in it, and it has beautiful color work and all of that. And I love the look of the sock, but I do have to say I'm not into knitting colorwork socks. I'm not into knitting socks with heavy duty patterns. I like easy patterns where I can just, for me, the socks are often, I knit socks when I'm tired or when I don't feel like knitting something complicated. They're my little stress reliever, and they're like almost like the creme de la creme. I love wearing them. I only wear hand knit socks. I must have, I don't know, maybe 50 pairs or whatever. But I love making them. I love giving them. But I don't like complicated patterns. I love self-striping yarns. But just the self-striping, and then I find if you have too much of a pattern going anyways, it kind of kills the pattern. If you have a busy pattern, have a quiet yarn, and if you have a quiet yarn, you can have a busier pattern. That's sort of my gauge. And I want to show you what I have left of each sock yarn, so I can make a pair of socks like this and actually get a pair of shorty socks. Or if I really love the yarn, I buy 2 balls, and then I can get 3 pairs of socks out of the 2 balls. And I don't mind knitting 2 or 3 pairs with the same yarn or the same color, because for me the socks are stress relievers. So second sock syndrome is really not a big thing for me. Or I break it up. If it's a one color, then I use the rest, goes in my sock bin for the toes or the cuffs or the heels. I thought about making a blanket one of the memory blankets, but I like them thicker, and I use almost everything on my toes, the cuffs, and the heels because you only need very little for that, and I usually have more than enough for that. So all of that goes in one bin. So these will end up shorty socks, or I do have more Halloween socks, so maybe I'll mix and match them where I'll either stripe in the other colors, or this will be the foot for the two of them, and then a different color will make the shaft. If they're Halloween socks, they can be all over the place. And with the socks, I think it's a very inexpensive place to have fun or do just something cutesy. The other thing that I was doing is I thought I do have a little bit of extra time. Drop one. I make these yarn pods, and this is how they come, and I sell them at through the Little Red Mitten and some of the quilt stores here in my area. And this is kind of what they look like. I mean, being a designer of things like that and being the sewer of things like that, I have the I get all of my prototypes or things where I think this seam was not quite as clean as I wanted, or this was not as deep as I wanted. So this is sort of the size that I settled on and the design that I had settled on. It's actually a bit smaller because I thought that this one here was not very deep, which I did want to make it deeper. I will show you. And they take a full jumbo ball of yarn. This is the depth. They lay flat when you don't need them, and they do have the two cross strings so that your yarn, you can close it all the way. I mean, if the ball of yarn is in there, you can't close it all the way. There we go. They are quite beautiful. I find that yarn is expensive, and this way it keeps the yarn clean, free of pet hair, the cat's not getting at it, the dog's not chasing it, they're just clean. But I had to play with the shape and how I wanted to do them, because I really did want them to lay flat. I have all kinds of knitting bags, and you have 3 or 4 of them together, and they're like this big, like you almost need a whole shelf. So what I did want is for any of my sock knitting bags or my knitting bags to store flat. I can put them in a drawer and then get them. But as you can see, I played with all kinds of shapes and sizes, and then at first I used an elastic, and I had a tab like this, and they were round. In this one here, I turned it inside out this way before I realized, okay, so I can do that actually a little bit different, and put the slit on the inside and then just sew a heart on it, and then it still had the round bottom, and it wasn't really laying. It kind of lays flat, but not really flat, until I decided on this design, just with a deeper with more depth in it, like I just showed you. But I used the I used elastics first, then I put in that remember when we had the masks and you had that little ear thingy? Well, I used that so that you can slide it along. Then I thought, well, that kind of looks boring, so what if I put a wooden bead in between it, and then you can do this. But there is pressure on this guy here, so I smacked my hands a couple of times with the beads, so that also didn't work. And this is how come I ended up with the two loops that are way easier to pull, and the fold bottom, which is really, really pretty. So I had made a couple hundred of those because they needed to go to the various stores, and I didn't even have any left to update my Facebook to say I actually do have them to sale for sale. However, if you do want some, just text me or message me on Facebook, and I'll show you what I do have in stock. Then I had bought some new fabric, and I have lots of fabric, but look at this. Is this not cute? And I'm not really sure if I want to make stitching project bags out of it, or if I'm going to make the knitting bags out of it that store flat. I'm just a sucker for pretty fabrics or pretty yarn or whatever it is, and they just don't stop making pretty patterns, pretty yarn, pretty fabric. And yeah, seems to be the thing. Then another thing that I wanted to share with you actually is, now that I'm thinking about it, I did this all a little bit out of sequence. When I was showing you the stocking, I wanted to show you how did I make up the pattern. So I counted the pattern on the, I counted the stitches on the original stocking, and the stocking has a shape that actually goes like this, and it gets narrower to the bottom. And very often the stockings, they don't look anatomically correct. That's just an FYI. But I counted it out, so I knew how big this thing is. And then when I sit in my recliner, as I also stitch, I often have one of these sitting on my lap or on my upper thigh. And I have some of these. They're just actually decor decals that you can screw on whatever it is, but they're metal. And if you have magnets, which I have stitch minders, I am a stitcher as a cross stitcher, I can just use this and stick my paper on it. And then I had bought, some time ago, I had bought these the book magnets, like for when you mark in your book where you are. And if I open them, I can just lay it over whichever line I want to stitch, or in my instructions that I want to knit, or whatever it is. So it sits on my lap like this, and I just move it up or down or whatever it is. Sorry about that. So this is kind of what that is, and it works quite well for me. Even if I work with Knit Companion, I can put my tablet in here and have it, and it doesn't move or anything. I just have it on my lap, and it makes it quite simple. And it's interesting how fast you can knit if you don't or stitch. I'm very sorry I couldn't get the phone to stop ringing, and then when it rang the second time, it actually bumped out the video. So I taped the rest of the video, and I didn't realize that it wasn't recording. So when I watched it and I realized what had happened, I re-recorded the ending of the video. However, the way that I put it in the bracket, it killed the sound. So now that I'm ready to rewatch it one more time, I realized, yeah, well, I'm gonna have to do that ending one more time. So where I had left off was we were talking about the bookmarks. I can put the bookmarks at any part of the at any part of wherever I want to stitch, above a row above or below, or where I want to knit, and I can just move it along, and things go a lot faster when I don't have to shift back and forth to look where I am, because it sits on my upper thigh or it sits on my leg right there, and I can just keep on going with my pattern and not interrupt anything at all. The sorry, the last thing that I did want to show you was it is not knitting related, but it is kind of yarn related, and they are felted slippers. There is a company here in Canada, and they're called Glare-Ups, and they make these kind of felted slippers. And because I have the rheumatoid arthritis, I have Raynaud syndrome that kind of goes along with that. And the Raynaud syndrome is when your hands and your feet get white and they get very, very cold. So one of the ways that I combat that is with my hand knitted socks, and the other way that I combat that is I have woolen shoes for outside that have a cork sole, and these are Glare-Ups, and they have a rubber sole. Some of them, they're little booties, but they have a velvety sole or they have a rubber sole. They're very, usually they don't go on sale very often, but I did find them on sale in this one store, and I thought they're just delightful. The felting is quite thick, and my feet don't sweat in these shoes. They are breathable. I can wash them if I want to. I've never washed any of my Glare-Ups. It is a Canadian company, and it is people making them, not machines making them. So they do have a bit of a different cost factor, but they last me for years and years. So this is not like a purchase that you have to replace all the time. So if you have any kind of warmth issues on your feet, or yeah, on your feet, this might be a nice alternative for you. There are other companies that also make them. One of them is Halflinger. There is a few of them. If you put into the internet like wool felt shoes or whatever, they do come up, and then just make sure that they are true wool felt and not a synthetic felt. That also happens, but they are just wonderful. So that is all. So those are all of the things that I wanted to tell you about and share with you, and let you know about, I guess. I wish you a wonderful, wonderful Christmas. And I wish the new year brings everything that you need, and all the peace that goes with it. So from my house to yours, I wish you just the best Christmas ever and a wonderful new year. You stay healthy and safe, and I will see you in the new year, and happy knitting.